the dagger from your back. Yeah. And that's that.
Whoopsie. Kind of got into the second track there. Shotgun Society. Interesting song. It was meant to be satire. Unfortunately today, it's a little too serious. How you doing? I hope that you can hear me. I hope everything sounds okay. It's been a minute since I've done this, but I'm coming along. I've taken all the slings and arrows so far, and I'm still here. Or as Elton John would say, I'm still standing. But barely. I gotta say, thank you so much for all the love you've shown me. It really does help. I'm a simple man with simple needs. Have you noticed the more things change, the more they stay the same? It's still 1963 in a lot of ways, if you know what I mean. Anyways, recently I showed a video with Dardu Cordona on Saturn theory that was really interesting. And I got into a conversation with Ted. And, Ted disagrees with, his theory is that it was a Herbig Haro system. Whether it was a sub-brown dwarf star that strayed into the solar system, or it was a Herbig Haro object, or it was, as DeGrazia and Milton say, a super Uranus. It's just all a matter of opinion. We don't have a time machine. We will never know. But did you notice, have you seen the video lately in Ganymede? It has more water than Earth. I thought that was interesting. Hopefully it'll be in the news more. The more we learn, you never know what you're going to find. But would they tell us the truth? I doubt it. We don't get the truth on anything. A lot of drama going on in the world right now. This is an escape. Me and Ted, Andy, and a little bit later on Nick got into an interesting conversation on Ganymede, his update. Ed's going to be 80 years old in June, and he's my friend. I'm proud to say that. He's a good man. He cares about the country, where it's headed. He cares about a lot of things. His whole life he's used his head for a lot more than a hat rack. I love Ted. But he's opinionated. Some people, might have a problem with that. I don't. I like opinion. Like they say, they're like assholes. Everybody's got one. I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak French. But without further ado, it's about an hour and 25 minutes. I hope you can hear me. I hope I'm talking better. I feel good outside of my tongue burning all the time. That shit, man, it just don't want to go away. I have to live on pain pills and Xanax. But it won't be long. I'll be able to put this behind me. I plan on living at least another 10 and 15 years. I want to be here with you. If something happened, though, I made my peace with God. I believe in God. And I think if He has a place for me, that'd be okay. But I'm not ready. So, I'm still here with you, and that's what matters. So here you go. This is me, Ted, Andy, and later on a little bit Nick. We get into some pretty good conversation. We put all the drama of the world behind us and just kick back and check it out. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment. I thought I'd start with a song because it's kind of a little ironic. And I wrote that song 10 years ago. Anyways, enjoy. Ted, Theodore, Holden, Ganymede, Herbig Haro, with my friend Andy and Nick. Enjoy.
Doing all right, surviving. Been yeah, the Discord is an it's a very, very complex piece of software to use. It's like, it's not simple. So there's a learning curve, and it's fairly steep.
Eddie, take that 0 off your age and you would learn it in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'd be able to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you'll get it.
yesterday we had a phone conversation where you kind of disagree with George Cardona's synopsis of how Saturn got in our solar system. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, there's no problem. I've got like several areas of disagreement with the Thunderbolts group in general. Okay, that includes particularly F. Cochran and Eduardo Cardona. Okay, Eduardo Cardona has suggested that the Saturnian group, might have come into our neighborhood starting from one of the satellite galaxies, okay? But in order to be captured, it would have to be moving at less than the escape velocity of our own solar system, right? Of the Sun-Jupiter system and our own solar system now. So I at one point had asked OpenAI, which is my go-to large language model AI system. As to, I said, okay, ChatGPT or OpenAI, right? It's like, I'd like for you to do the math. How long would it take a dwarf star like Jupiter or Saturn used to be to cover the distance from the nearest satellite galaxy to the Milky Way to our own solar system at less than the escape velocity from our own solar system, right? In such a way as to be captured by our own solar system. And OpenAI, did the calculation, said it would take a bit more than 1 billion years. It would take, maybe 1.2, 1.5 billion years, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you believe what they tell you in our schools about how old the Earth is, about how old the solar system is, how old the Milky Way galaxy is, then you might think that you had 1.2 or 1.5 billion years, but I don't believe that. The problem is that the people who tell us that the Earth is 4 billion years old, or that the solar system, is 4 billion years old, are the same people who tell us that dinosaurs perished 65 million years ago, right? And we know that doesn't work anymore. It's like they've been finding soft tissue in dinosaur remains since 2006, right?
Yeah.
And this is Mary Schweitzer from from North Carolina State University in Raleigh, NC, right? Who was out in Montana working on a dig where they had a particularly, in particularly good condition, they had like a Tyrannosaur fossil. And they did not have a large military helicopter like a, what do they call it, a Chinook or something like that, right?
Yeah.
They only had a little college helicopter, which could not, they had the one big leg bone, which they wanted to get back to the university, probably, I believe the University of Montana, right? It's like, they needed to get this leg bone back to the university, but they couldn't carry it in one piece. They cut it in half with a chainsaw, right? And got the pieces of this Tyrannosaur leg bone back to the laboratories. And at that point, one of the people working on the project suggested something which hadn't been done previously. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's like he suggested, that nobody'd ever looked for soft tissue or anything like that in dinosaur remains. Because they just assumed it wouldn't be there, right? They assumed that these remains are 65 million years old.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in that ballpark, right? It's like, he said, but what the hell? It's like we've got a leg bone, we've got this femur bone sitting here, which has been cut in half already, right? All it would take is to take a knife and flake off some small particles of this bone onto a glass slide, put that under a microscope and see what we see, and lo and behold, meat like you would find in a grocery store, right? I mean, meat and collagen and blood vessels and, just all kinds of stuff that wouldn't even be there after 1 million years, much less 65 million years. Okay. And in the intervening time since then, they've found increasing instances of this phenomenon, right? Finding skin and soft tissue and organs and all kinds of stuff that absolutely should not be there in material which is, 65 million years old. Now, what I've done, and naturally, I mean, I try to tell my church friends, that you're not doing Christianity any favors by trying to tell anybody that the world is 6,000 or 7,000 years old, which is what this Bishop Usher deduced, just by adding up Bible chronologies. So what you could do, in theory, is to just take this 40,000 year figure, which is what they got. They've sent some of the soft tissue from dinosaur remains off to the dating laboratories, particularly at the University of Georgia, right, for radiocarbon dating. And stuff shouldn't, dinosaur remains should not radiocarbon date, right? Radiocarbon dating has an absolute limit of about 60,000 years, beyond which nothing should radio date at all. I mean, like all radiocarbon should be gone. But nonetheless, they were getting numbers like 20, 30, 40,000 years for some of this material. And what I've said is that you could take this 40,000 year figure and assume that to be like a ballpark figure for the begin date for dinosaurs, and plug that into your little 24-hour clock model, which says that if the Earth is 24 hours old, if you view the history of the Earth as 24 hours, then dinosaurs appear around 10:45 p.m. Okay. If you do that, if you plug that 40,000 into that, you get a number like 700,000 years, which I could live with, which Bishop Usher couldn't live with, and the evolutionites couldn't begin to live with. Right? For evolution, you need giant spaces of time, like trillions or quadrillions of years. And if you do that, like I say, you get a number like about
GM emoji Pepe _pink_heart.
Don't worry about that. I can't stop that. Just ignore it.
I understand.
Okay.
So if anybody would ask me how old is the Earth, I'm going to say, okay, it's like all you can do is to try to come up with a good educated guess. And my own version of that educated guess would be like maybe 200,000 to a couple of million, 2-3 million years, right? Something like that would be, I think,
APEP Winter trademark said you do .be.
Yeah. Don't worry about that. I can't get rid of it. Just ignore it.
Yeah. I understand, but and you understand what I'm saying, Greg. I'm saying, my own version of a reasonable, educated guess for how old our planet is, or the solar system, is a few 100,000 to a few million years, right? But I mean, not tens or hundreds of millions or billions of years. And this whole scheme, which says that you need to have, like, for the Saturnian system to wander in from one of the satellite galaxies, it would, mathematically, it would take more than 1 billion years. So, I mean, the time isn't there for that. Okay. The other thing is that you're looking at a zero probability event as far as, the likelihood of something, like a dwarf star on a trek like that, just landing in the neighborhood of our solar system would be, it would have to be precisely aimed by somebody like Ming the Merciless from Mongo, okay, Emperor Ming.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen the Flash Gordon movies, then that Emperor Ming was going to try to torch some sort of an American city with a ray gun, right? He's going to aim the ray gun at Earth. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, one little exercise that I've done in the past says that, like, okay, I mean, when you talk about firearms, you've got like pistols and rifles, which you use to try to shoot things that don't move or that don't move much, right? And then you've got shotguns that you use to try to shoot things that do move, right? So, the one possibility for Saturn to be captured by our solar system would be, to have somebody like Emperor Ming precisely aim the Saturn system at our solar system
It couldn't have just been a brown dwarf like Proxima Centauri that strayed too close to the sun. You're saying that it had to come from a Herbig Haro.
Well, I'm getting around to that in a sort of a long-winded way, Greg. It's like,
I know.
What I'm doing, that's the big advantage of Troy McLaughlin and my version of the story. Okay, mm-hmm. Troy and my version of the history of the Saturnian system, it doesn't require probabilistic miracles, right? That has everything that we see in our system now originating in a single. In a single cosmic Birkeland current and a single Herbig Haro string, right?
Right.
So that you've got believable physics. You've got, you're not grossly violating the laws of probability. Let me just sort of finish up where I was going a moment ago. It's like I said that as opposed to the Saturnian system being aimed by Emperor Ming at our solar system, it's like the other possibility would be to have some kind of an enormous cloud of Saturn-sized objects passing by, passing by the neighborhood of our solar system. Yeah. And to have one of them get captured, see, that would eliminate the violation of the laws of probability, but it would still have to be traveling. That whole, not just the thing that got captured, the whole cloud of Saturn-sized objects would have to be traveling at less than the escape velocity of our system for the one item to get captured, right? And if that had happened 6,000 or 10,000 years ago, then it would still be fairly close to us. It would, our satellites and our telescopes would pick it up easily. Our telescopes can see Proxima Centauri from here, right?
Yeah.
So that something like that had crossed the path of the Earth like 10,000 years ago, it would be very close to us still. It would be very easy for our telescopes to see. We would have seen it.
Yeah.
We would still see this giant cloud of Saturn-sized objects.
Hold on. Hold on 1 second. Nick, are you there?
Hi, Greg. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. All right, carry on, Ted.
Yeah, can I just get a word in?
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Yeah.
At the moment, we're observing a fairly very stable solar system.
Yeah.
We can see these resonances in the planetary orbits, etc. Although they are shifting. We can see at the moment, maybe by the rate of shift that's already happening, that the planetary is very stable. It's we've got these resonances set up with Venus and Earth. We've got them. There are all sorts of different ones that are set up, and this must, at the rate of change of the orbits and the rotations, this must have taken a real long time to achieve stability. Now, the other thing we notice is that the inner solar system, which is inside the asteroid field, works at a slightly different harmonic than the outer solar system. Well, it's a totally different harmonic.
Well, yeah.
So it's almost like we've got two systems operating within the solar system.
Right, and Ted is saying that he doesn't agree with the brown dwarf just wandering into our solar system. He thinks that we're all part of the same Herbig Haro object.
APEP Winter trademark said you do not be.
Because we don't have a time machine. So basically it's a guess.
Well, the only metrics we do have are these planetary rotations, we can at least find out which ones are trying to achieve stability harmonically again, because this seems to be the objective of the system. Now it all changes the more energy fluctuates in and out of that system. And we have these comets whizzing by that can disrupt it, which maybe cause the asteroid belt.
Yeah.
We can consider these things.
All right.
I'm not arguing. I'm not. It's just I'd like to, just say these, put that into the mix, as it were.
All right, Ted, carry on.
Nick, I'm sorry. It's like, let me run this by you. It's like it does not sound as familiar with my work, so with the Ganymede hypothesis. Now, the conclusion that Trey McLaughlin and I came to 12 or 13 years ago was that you've got two major keys to prehistory and paleontology and trying to reconstruct the history of our solar system. These two major keys are, number one, planetary axis tilts, okay? And then number two, eye sizes, the relative sizes of the eyes of the creatures living in the one body or the other, okay? So, as far as axis tilts go, you've got two, you said that just from what you've studied, you believe that the solar system is in two parts. Well, it really was in two parts. If you go back, 50 or 100,000 years ago, then what you've got is like a body. You've got one group, which is the Sun and Jupiter and Venus and Mercury, with axis tilts less than 10 degrees. This is one version of a primordial system, right? And you've got Jupiter with a very low axis tilt, indicating that it was up close to the Sun. Which is the normal situation in the Milky Way galaxy for gas giant planets and dwarf stars that are aligned with a main sequence star like our Sun. It's normal for them to be up very close, and they call those hot Jupiters.
Right.
Okay, now, you've got the other group, you've got two other bodies, which are going to be Uranus and Pluto, which have oddball axis tilts, which don't seem to be related to anything. I mean, I'm just going to leave those alone. But the other four bodies, which you notice, are going to be Saturn and Neptune and Mars and Earth, which all have this roughly 26-degree axis tilt. Okay, which very strongly, powerfully suggests that these were a separate system at one time. Now, what Trey McLaughlin said was the fairly obvious way that this would have arisen would be that these bodies had been in a linear alignment left over from this original Herbig Haro string. And they flew into the plane of the Sun-Jupiter system at a roughly 26 degree angle, and that as these bodies were captured, eventually it was ordinary gyroscopic force would cause them to retain this 26 degree angle of approach in the form of axis tilts. Okay. Now the axis, if you look up axis tilts for our system, what you're going to find is that Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth have tilts ranging from about 23 to about 28 degrees, right? I say roughly 26, but that's the general idea. Now, once there's a long story as to how this came about, right?
Okay.
Are you familiar with the idea of cosmic Brooklyn currents and Herbig Haro strings?
APEP winter trademarks at youtube.com.
And this, yeah, of course, Sam. And J.N.O. Cook sort of outlined a system where these two systems would interact, didn't they? So, the two systems of varying access tilts. He described a system how they would interact over a time period.
Let me run this by the other major key is eye sizes, right? It's like, and you've got two kinds of situations that you might encounter with dwarf stars. If you take a dwarf star, which is up close to a main sequence star like the sun, then you're not going to, then you're going to have, for any kind of a planet, a rocky body like Mars or Earth aligned with a dwarf star like that, then you're looking at a bright, warm existence, right? And you're looking at relatively small eyes. Humans and dolphins have the smallest relative eye sizes of advanced creatures right now.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a body like Saturn was, or like Proxima Centauri would be, which is off away from the main sequence stars that they're associated with, then the normal situation is going to be for rocky bodies like Mars or Earth aligned with something like that to be inside the plasma heliosphere of the dwarf star, and the light from the outer universe is going to be blocked. It's not going to get into that, right? So it's like the only light you're going to get is going to be the purple or ultraviolet light from the dwarf star. And that says that you would expect the eyes of those kinds of creatures to be very large, right? And in fact, the eye sockets, that you see with Neanderthal and other hominid remains, with dinosaur remains, okay, are much bigger than ours, right? The Neanderthal was a fabulously bug-eyed looking, a realistic reconstruction of a Neanderthal, and I go with Danny Vendermini's reconstructions of Neanderthals, right? A realistic reconstruction. It's going to show the Neanderthal to be not a human ancestor, okay? It's like a very advanced bipedal ape with huge dark world eyes, with a typical Ice Age fur coat, like 6 or 8 inches. And, now, the other funny thing is the Neanderthal brain was larger than ours, but it was dominated by the area of the brain associated with vision. So you didn't even have like a forehead or, we have foreheads, and it's like our brains are dominated by this frontal lobe, which is, logical thinking, right? Logic and calculations. The Neanderthal didn't have it's like basically what you're seeing is the Neanderthal brain was, to a large extent, the neurophysiological equivalent of the circuitry for a night vision system.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you had says, it doesn't sound like Nick is familiar with the Ganymede hypothesis. I mean, you had two approaches of the Saturnian system. What Trey McLaughlin had said was that the sun had somehow or other captured, Jupiter and its satellites, right? But that had slowed the movement of the Sun-Jupiter part of the system to the point where the Saturnian system is eventually going to catch up with it, right? So you have this, and all of this was on a straight line. All of this, these Herbig Haro strings are straight, typically, so that this first approach is on a straight line. It would have to be. The sun would have to be on one side of the thing. You can't have a transfer of humans from Ganymede to Earth. Ganymede 100,000 years ago would have been a perfect human world. It would have had everything that you need for, and like I said, I hate to sound like I'm all over the place, right? But you've got bits and pieces of a story, so it all hangs together, right? It's like a reasonable human world has to be bright. The tiny human eyes has to be warm, like fur, right? It has to be wet. The aquatic adaptations that Elaine Morgan described has to be safe. It has to be safe from sea monsters. You can't have sharks or anything like that in the water. It's like it has to be safe from land monsters. You can't have like hyenodons or entelodons or terror birds or carnosaurs or anything like that, just standing and waiting to snap up the first human that ever steps out of the water.
Right.
Okay. It has to be safe from cosmic radiation. Okay. And the main, the thing that keeps us safe from cosmic radiation is the intrinsic magnetosphere. It's not borrowed from anything, The two bodies in our whole system now that have an intrinsic magnetosphere are Earth and Ganymede.
Right.
Okay, Ganymede and
Ganymede certainly has, but the magnetic influence of Jupiter is absolutely enormous. I've just been looking at these latest satellite reports that I can get my hands on of Ganymede. And they're discussing quite a lot.
Years ago, Ganymede had everything that you need for a human home world, right? A reasonable human world. Earth didn't. Earth had the intrinsic magnetosphere, but that's all it had. It's like Earth was like a dark, cold place, and it was a natural home for hominids, like the Neanderthal. It's like there's Lloyd Pye, without knowing anything at all about Ganymede, said that the hominids were native to Earth. Humans obviously weren't. So you've got to have humans coming from some other place, right? So that you have this first approach of the Saturnian system to the Sun-Jupiter system with the outside bodies of the two systems going to be Earth on the outside of the Saturnian system and then Ganymede on the outside of the Sun-Jupiter system. You have this near approach where you had like some kind of a plasma physics event which involved water, which is either an electrical water bridge or a water tornado or something like that, right? You had humans and other aquatic mammals transferring to Earth, splashing down in the Pacific Ocean, most likely. And then but you didn't have the Saturn system just go sailing straight on into the Sun-Jupiter system. It had, electromagnetic repulsion, right? It bounced back and away. It bounced off at a 26, it bounced off the center line of the original Herbig Haro system, right? And that center line involved a central Birkeland current. And the Pythagoreans spoke of the cosmic bodies in our system having originally orbited what they call the central fire, right? And the central fire was the cosmic Birkeland current, okay, which still existed. So that, once the Saturnian system had bounced back away from the Sun-Jupiter system and off of the center line, then it would be rotating the central Birkeland current, right? Because Birkeland currents themselves rotate, which you can see with spiral galaxies, right? I mean, spiral galaxies are turned by and controlled by Birkeland currents, and you can see this, right? You can see, in fact, our own galaxy has a Birkeland current running straight through its center, which they call the the Twisted Pair Nebula.
Okay.
Okay, and that's a common situation. And if you look up Herbig Haro objects,
Yeah, I have.
you know, like, and you go looking for the idiot's answer. You know, you go looking for the wrong answer as to what exactly a Herbig Haro's object is. They use the term object. I use the word string.
Yeah.
Right, because what you're seeing is obvious. What you're getting is that a Birkeland current is a twisted pair of, it looks like an RNA DNA spiral, right? It's a twisted pair of electrical currents which cross each other, and at these points where the two currents cross each other, you have short circuiting, and you have electromagnetic pinch points which do have the power to agglomerate the plasma of space into stars and protostars. Okay, so you end up with what looks like a string of Christmas tree lights, which has been pulled taut.
Yeah.
Or like a shish kebab with the shishes all lit up, right? You know, so that's what you're looking at. Okay. When you look at these, you do these image searches for Herbig Haro objects, right? Well, then what you see in a lot of them is these nodules. You know, it doesn't. They say that they're jets of material, right? But I mean, number one, a jet of material would dissipate almost instantly in the near vacuum of space. Okay, so that wouldn't stick around. And number two, you wouldn't get these round nodules, you know, forming up. So that what Troy and I have said is that a Herbig, and I use the word Herbig Haro string, not object.
Okay.
Because it's a string of objects. It's not a single object, right? It's not a jet. It's a Birkeland current with stars and possibly, you know, like gas giant planets, things like that, showing up at these pinch points. Mm-hmm. Okay. What you had originally in our own solar system was going to be like from right to left, the way I would normally draw it, you know, just for an illustration.
I think our solar system is unusual in that it isn't a binary system. That is one of the only. It is one of the only systems that we observe that isn't a binary or trinary system.
Okay.
And so maybe at one point, like you say, the configuration went into a binary system and then somehow just went into a unitary one, you know. But you know, it is that length. It is that the time to find stability in the shells of the Birkeland currents. That's it, and it'd be good to, you know, obviously the planets have arranged themselves at the correct electrical stability point on that system.
Okay, look, it's like the way I picture this thing, it's like originally to the right you have the sun and then Jupiter and then Jupiter's moons, right? And somehow or other in the middle of all this you had Mercury. Mercury was somewhere in this picture, might have been a moon of Jupiter's, I don't know. It's like very, very late in the game you had Venus being ejected from the equatorial region of Jupiter. Right, that's another funny thing, right? It's like Venus and Jupiter have the exact same axis tilt to within less than half a degree. Okay, slightly less than half a degree, right? That absolutely, to my way of thinking, confirms Immanuel Velikovsky's claim of Venus having arisen from Jupiter, having been ejected as a means of relieving electrical stress, right? Now, the ancients didn't write anything that way. They wrote that Athena had been born from the head of Zeus, right? But it's the same thing. They're just using their own vernacular, not ours.
Yeah, they use emotional rather than gravitation or you know, electrical forces. Right. They use emotive forces, didn't they?
Right. Another question mark with Venus is, like, where does this retrograde spin come from? It comes from being ejected from the equatorial region of Jupiter, and you have to picture okay, it's like I'm looking from the north straight down at the top of the of Jupiter, and you get this body of core material being ejected straight outwards. From the, so it's going to erupt on the equatorial region. And
Said Russ Frankie has joined.
Just don't worry about that.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about that talking. Go ahead.
Okay. What I'm saying is that, like, if you look at it from the top, if you're looking at it from the top, and if Jupiter is spinning counterclockwise, say, then the body of material being ejected is going to have a higher degree of contact with solar material on its right, to the right, which would be pushing. And it's going to be like gears. In other words, it's going to mesh. It's going to be exactly like gears, which when they mesh together, it's like the one spins the one way, the other spins the other way. You're going to get that retrograde spin just because of this higher degree of contact from the material on the side that's coming into the body of material which is being ejected.
I have to step in here for a minute and apologize for the video being so manic. I've had display issues lately. Something's messed up with my display. I'm not a computer expert, and it just seems manic to me, and I hope I'm not driving me crazy. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to resolve the issue while he's talking, and it's driving me crazy. So, I apologize for that. Back to the show.
Okay, that's where this retrograde spin comes from.
Okay.
It's like putting a different spin on a ball, isn't it? If you're bowling a cricket ball or a baseball, putting bottom spin on it. Retrograde spin. So it does work. You can do that. So.
Right. Anyway, 100,000 years ago, if you looked at our system with the sun on the right, the sun and then Jupiter and then a whole bunch of empty space, Jupiter's moons, then a whole bunch of empty space, and then the Saturnian system, which is going to be pointed back towards the sun, Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Earth, right? And this is the other big area of disagreement between myself and the Thunderbolts group. The Thunderbolts group had, just working from iconography, come to the conclusion that the Saturnian system was like Saturn, Venus, Mars, and Earth, right? That's what they thought they were seeing in the iconography. And like I say, to my way of thinking, the axis tilt data forbids that, that there's simply no possible way. Venus has the same 3-degree axis tilt that Jupiter has, right? It's like Velikovsky is absolutely right about that. That's I believe that this axis tilt thing absolutely locks Velikovsky's version of the story. The Thunderbolts group believed that they discovered that the Saturnian system consisted of Saturn, Venus, Mars, and then Earth. I don't buy that. It's like you've got another body sitting there in the system which has the correct 26-degree axis tilt, which is Neptune, right? So that the Earth, in the process of being captured by the sun, I said there had been two close approaches, right? You had this first approach where you had humans transferring from Ganymede to Earth, and then the Saturnian system recoiling back and off of the center line. And then you had a second approach during which the Saturnian bodies were captured by the sun, and the small bodies, I believe, were captured first. I mean, they came in first. That's like the Earth and Mars. So in other words, the Earth went very quickly, went from a Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth alignment to a Saturn, to a Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Earth alignment, and that the iconography that David Talbot and Dev Cochran and Eduardo Cardano were investigating is basically showing like Jupiter, and then Venus, and then Mars, and then Earth, right? So that the Egyptian god Ra is going to be Jupiter, not Saturn. Okay, and that changes a few other things as well, right? But you can see that you can see the potential for getting confused with that one.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
It's all a matter of sort of hypothesis anyway. So I think it's worthwhile considering the other options myself. But when you see the synchronicity of Venus, and I know this all relies on mythology talks about Venus whizzing past close and the Medusa and all this lot. But when you see the synchronicity that the planet Venus has with the Earth now, it's got an 8 to 5 perfectly 8 to 5 signet 8 to 5 completely cogged at 8 to 5. We only ever see one side of Venus, so even its orbit is completely conditioned by Earth. We've had significant contact for this to happen, and obviously we see the massive scars on Mars, which were described in Homer. We see all these events that have happened within the memory of mankind, but that might be millions of years. This could go back absolutely to the hundreds of thousands of years. Because for the planets to synchronize as they are, and these synchronizations are all over this solar system. I haven't got the synchronicities, but there's long lists of different planets that are completely reacted to the neighbors. And at the current rates of change, we can see that this configuration has happened over millions of years. It's got to have happened over millions of years because of the rate of change that we observe of these systems.
If you're dealing with a gravity-only cosmology, then you might be talking about millions of years, but it's like, if you go back 100,000 years, it's like our system was controlled by electromagnetic forces, not by gravity.
Right.
Okay.
It is now. I'm sure it is now. I'm sure it still is now.
Yeah.
Far more controlled by electromagnetic forces than gravity. Of course, I believe that.
Right.
But nevertheless, nevertheless, we don't witness these massive, movements of the planets, like gods looming up in the skies. We just don't see that, and these,
No, we don't know.
These fluctuations of energy exist. That's what we're finding out, isn't it? The more we know about it, the more we can look back to the past, really. Now it's only just now that we're actually finding out what the moons like Ganymede are made of. It's below an ice crust. They think the sea goes down about 800 kilometers. Now they don't.
That's another thing that appears to be wrong. Okay, and like Troy made a big study of this. It's like basically they're trying to account for two things. They're trying to account for the ultra low moment of inertia of Ganymede. The fact that most of the mass of Ganymede appears to be concentrated towards the center, towards the core, and also for the conductivity that you would need to create this intrinsic magnetosphere. Okay, Troy came to the conclusion that this outer mantle, most of what you read indicates that involves claims of a massive outer mantle of salt water. Roy did not buy that, and I don't buy that, okay? It's like we believe that the outer mantle is pumice and not salt water. Okay, that originally what you'd had 100,000 years ago.
I've got the latest satellite reports in front of me here, and it tells you actually the chemical constituents that they found in these bands, and they're trying to find out whether they're exogenic or endogenic, i.e. were they made on the surface of contact between the massive sea and the lithosphere under it, which is 800 miles below the ice crust, they say. And on top, there are these massive big fields of different salts, all of which
when Ben Obi has joined.
would support life formulation, but they're confused as to where these salts come from, because there's massive magnetic effects from around the pole of Ganymede from Jupiter, but also they've found this massive big scoop out of the ice crust, it looks like, and again it's an absolutely massive scar across the side of Ganymede, and they're trying to obviously put a date on, and it's caused, if you look at a photograph of Ganymede, it's caused this massive kind of looks like an exploded crater or something like that. It covers half the side of the moon. So it is an absolutely massive impact that's caused by something or an explosion. Who knows? But anyway, they've got long lists of these different salts that they've observed with this spectrographic analysis, only sent back 2 years ago. So I mean, it's worthwhile reading what the satellites are saying about it. Juice. They're sending one. There's one already up, which is going to arrive at Ganymede in 2029, and it's going to fly only about 1,000 miles off the surface. I think 3 or 4 times, and then they're thinking about crashing it into Ganymede to observe what happens when they do that.
So Kerry, go ahead, continue, Ted.
Okay, the conclusion Troy and I came to is that you had an outer mantle of mainly pumice, right? So that you had you had a water world, right? You had a freshwater ocean world where you had islands and floating bergs of pumice, right, with luxurious vegetation. It's like you had a perfect human world. The humans could come up on the land to cook things, to make nets, to do any sort of thing which humans use, human industry would contrive, right? But you don't have salt. In other words, the knowledge that we had like 10 or 12 years ago was that you don't have salt, sodium on Ganymede, right? It's like, the conclusion we came to is that the conductivity that you need for the intrinsic magnetosphere was being created by what is called P holes, right? Which are, I mean, pumice is nothing but holes, right? It's like, so you got a huge ratio of surface area to volume, right? And P-holes and rocks are conductive, so that gives you conductivity in rocks on Earth, right? So that was the conclusion we came to.
So basically what you're saying is Ganymede is the only other body that has a magnetosphere like Earth.
An intrinsic magnetosphere, which is not being borrowed from some other body like a gas giant planet or a star. Okay.
Okay.
In past ages, it's highly likely that Mars also would have had an intrinsic magnetosphere. It's been hammered out of it just by the catastrophes. You still have, Mars is still minimally inhabited now, right? It's like the NASA JPL images show that. I mean,
Right.
I've got my own little collection of Mars images, from the last 30 years.
Yeah.
On bearfabrique.com. The images show indigenous humans and small animals, like weasels or foxes or, like the little ground squirrel, the image that went viral about 8 years ago, whenever that was, right?
Yeah.
At any rate, there are no large animals, no flying birds. Okay, but I've been told that the atmosphere on Mars at ground level is about like on Earth at 10 or 12,000 feet. Now, I don't believe that the fighter plane or bomber pilots in World War II needed oxygen masks at 10 or 12,000 feet. I think 20, 30,000 each definitely did.
18,000 feet. You got to be over 18,000.
Right. Now, the B-29s were, they were pressurized, right? I mean, they had, those guys were walking around just in short sleeves and no need for oxygen masks or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But...
Ted, the basis of your difference to what the video that Greg had the other day and now is your real basis of difference is the angle of the planets, which you would say came in with the Saturn system. I don't really think we can argue about timelines because we can only know what we come up with from these telescopes we've got up there now looking around.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of discussion, even in mainstream, about the distances and stuff like that. Are they as far away as we actually believe they are? So there's a possibility that as everything was rearranging itself, something did hit Ganymede. The other thing I'd say is, well, tomorrow apparently around 12 o'clock, NASA's going to have something on about that 3IA, Atlas 3IA. And it's been interesting. You had all the claimants coming out when it first started coming around about how big it was and it was going to do this and do that. And it would appear at this stage, from what I've heard, is the sun has been doing its job as the protector of its family, the planets, and it's been given it a fair whack in the CMEs. So it will be interesting to see now that America's sort of back at work, what NASA's got to say. No, I don't know if you've heard about that when NASA's doing that on it tomorrow, which would be today for you people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm saying is that, you had all the pundits when that, because of the size of that 3IA Atlas and that. Now, sort of, I don't know, I suppose you could say it's become a bit of a non-event, other than we got some beautiful, colourful skies at times, Greg.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, I think plus it's coming back into view again, so they can do a lot of, and it's going to do a load more light shows, which will confound them, but will be exactly what's predicted by electric universe models with the plasma, the double tails, all that lot, various explosions happening. When it's saying hello to the other little bodies it passes by. The sun absolutely kicking off on both sides when it did its perihelion. It was a completely symmetric explosion. The sun did. It was quite amazing to watch the whatever it was of that, the cartoon of that, the sun blowing off. That Stephen Burns show some quite good. He's got a good opinion on all that. I think he ascribed life to the system, certainly.
That's interesting, Nick. Earth couldn't have brought man naturally because the dinosaurs would have ate him, right?
Yeah, that's another kettle of fish.
Well, they didn't eat all the rats, did they? You know, and maybe you know they came out the same form, and you know the different vibrations, the different electromagnetic fields set up by your own mind. It creates the morphologies. So maybe the idea was somewhere else, and the conditions became right for that to happen here. You know, and so when it's right, it somehow it happens. But it seems like just about every area that could be filled by life is filled by life on the Earth. Every conceivable space where something could actually live, it lives. So I'd be very surprised if there was nothing living in the seas, in those sheltered under the ice, in the sheltered water on Ganymede. You know, maybe they're living in ice tunnels that are somehow kind of warmed up by something. Who knows what?
Okay, it's hard to picture anything living on Ganymede right now. Ganymede right now is a frozen wasteland. It's like, it's possible maybe some kind of a very cold adapted creature or something like that. Fish, seals.
Yeah, it's got liquid water there, yeah.
Eddie, can I throw this one by you? That's what it looks like to us, right? But then you've got to think in a desert, it's 48, 50 degrees the majority of the time. You still have things living in there. You know, those goannas and all those sorts of things, lizards and all that. And they exist in that environment. So it's quite possible, I agree with Nick, it's quite possible that on Ganymede, you could probably find some.
I'm saying it's impossible. I mean, you might have things living on Ganymede now, but it's like, you know, we don't know as much. It's like, I'm sure that by now it's like NASA has had a close look at Ganymede, but they're being very close. You know, they're not telling anybody about it. It's like they're you know, being secretive about it. You know, that book of mine, and you know, it's been out there for like 12 years, in one form or other, has been out there for 12 or 13 years now, and they have to know about this, right? I mean, they can't not be aware, you know, the claims of human, of first humans on Earth coming from Ganymede.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, you see, there must be something. There must be something that gets their curiosity to spend the money to send probes and that to Ganymede when, you know, what's Saturn got 80 odd moons, hasn't it? You know, like, well, would you just pick that one out? There must be some reason for it, right? And so that's what I see is they just don't pick them out of the barrel. And I've got, you know, I've always believed you've got something in that Ganymede idea that Ganymede was once a planet and had life, as we know life. Yeah. So, yeah, and then when you had all the other entrances, things got tipped upside down, and somehow or other we ended up here. Yeah, lucky.
I'm looking at the data off this latest Juno satellite, and it's in from Nature Astronomy magazine, and it's a pretty comprehensive rollout of actually what they've found with using these different spectral analysis, and they're trying to interpret why they've formulated into these bands. Which they're not quite sure of, but they have found a real lot of salts on there, different sodium, chlorine, and really lots of different salts, and aldehydes, which is something to do with formaldehyde. there are quite a few. There are different environments on Ganymede, especially at the tropical regions, equatorial regions, because of this massive magnetic effect from Jupiter, and it even measures that. It's even measured that what it is. It's like kilovolt, hundreds of kilovolts at that part. So it formulates different chemical formulations. Well, they're quite excited about it, and they've only been able to take photos at the moment of 1 pixel per kilometer resolution, and so they can't discern massive amounts. But this next mission in 2029, they'll be able to get down to I think it's 10 meters per pixel or something like that. So we'll get a really good idea of the terrain there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd like to have rolling probes on Ganymede, like you have on Mars. You'd like a close-up look, not just satellite images.
Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah. Again, Troy and I came to the conclusion that it had been a freshwater ocean world. It's like I don't picture humans thriving in a sea of formaldehyde or complex salts or anything like that, right? It's like there did not appear, from the knowledge that we had when Troy put that study together, it was like there did not appear to be any sodium around Ganymede.
Yeah, I think the sodium comes from Saturn.
Yeah. At any rate, the two things that I've been looking at recently, which I believe amount to a confirmation for the Ganymede hypothesis as well as a rough timeline, are these two things that I've gotten from OpenAI, ChatGPT, but OpenAI 5, and that has to do with that Eemian optimum, okay, and then also with the question of a Neanderthal population collapse, which would have occurred around 100,000 years ago, 110.
With your trademark said UU.be.
We would have eaten.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's just that other voice. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, Betty.
Yeah.
Betty, as we took over, like history shows, as we took over, we would have basically pushed them out of their land areas, right? Like, urban sprawl cities, animals, bears.
The biggest thing that happened to the Neanderthal was daylight. Okay. And it was like the biggest thing. You had two things, I think, that happened to the Neanderthal mainly. One was having to deal with humans with projectile weapons and in greater numbers, right? You always have this ratio of populations of prey animals versus predators, like 10 or 100 to 1, which is what you have in Africa now, right? And you have to ask this question, like, what if all of a sudden the Cape buffalo and the zebras in Africa had laddles? The lions would be screwed. They wouldn't have any answer to that. It's like, and that's one of the things that happened to the hominid, the Neanderthal and other hominids. The other thing that happened was daylight. And a friend of mine has suggested that this was going to be as if you're sitting out there in the middle of a football stadium in pitch black, the darkest night of the month, in the middle of the stadium, right, with a pair of night vision goggles on, turned up to max, and then somebody turns on the floodlights in the stadium, right? Well, that's going to be horrible. like you're the sonar operator on a submarine, right? And you've got the headset turned all the way up to max. You're listening for propeller screws off in the distance, and somebody drops a depth bomb that blows off 100 feet away from the submarine, right? Well, I mean, people went deaf over that. That's not a hypothetical. I mean, people lost their hearing on account of that in World War II, right? So that you had like a sensory overload. The two things that I've been looking at, involve like, number one, the conditions that you'd have to have happen, for transfer of humans from Ganymede to Earth. I don't picture humans splashing down into the cold, dark world of the Neanderthal heyday and prospering, okay, or surviving even. Okay, so I asked OpenAI, whether or not this first near approach of the Saturnian system to the Sun-Jupiter system might have produced a climate optimum on Earth. I said, when was the most recent climate optimum prior to the Holocene, right? And it said, you'd be talking about the Eemian, named after the city of Eem, E-E-M, in the Netherlands, right? Which they said, when was that? It's around 100,000 years ago, 110, 120, whatever, So they can't put a precise date on it, but like says somewhere around 100,000 years ago. And so, yeah, I mean, that figures, right? I mean, I can believe that this first near approach of the Saturnian system to the Sun-Jupiter system would have been 100,000 years ago. That makes sense, right? That would have created a climate optimum. Now, the other thing that I have a hard time picturing would be humans splashing down into the full population of hominids that you would have had in the heyday of the Neanderthal, right? Like maybe 100,000, a couple of 100,000 years ago. So I said, what can you tell me about, Neanderthal populations, and the levels of Neanderthal populations going back around that same time period? He said, there was apparently like a Neanderthal what they call a Neanderthal population bottleneck, right around 120,000 years ago, right? And OpenAI told me that, the population of Neanderthals on Earth never recovered from that. They never came back to what they had been. What I believe happened was that the Neanderthal, after this first near approach, after you have this plasma heliosphere, the Saturnian system stripped away, by the radiation from the sun, right? Then the Neanderthal was no longer able to go out into the steppe land and hunt the herds of large prey animals, which he normally had been hunting, right? At that point, he was confined to darker areas like forests with a forest canopy, right? Or like the area around the Levant, where you find large numbers of Neanderthal remains in caves, right? So some kind of a place where you've got caves where you could hole up at least daylight hours, right? The last Neanderthal stand in Europe would have been in southern Spain like 30, 40,000 years ago, right? And the last human group to get much of a look at Neanderthals was going to be the Spanish Basque, right? And the Basque have what they call a folklore monster that they call Basawan. It means forest lord, the lord of the forest, somebody living in the dark, underneath the dense canopy of the forests in Europe, right? And
well, the Irish certainly had them. They had the Fomorians, who were a mythical sort of race that the Tuatha De Danann fought with. Now they had sort of beastly features, but as did, of course, the Titans from Greek mythology. Who were wiped out. Pre even the Greek heroes. So they could well represent the Neanderthals. But of course, they realise that the Neanderthals, there's all sorts of sort of cultural, let's say, similarities between what the Neanderthals were doing and what the humans were doing, as far as I can see it. I think there were different branches of hominids that they branched off and separated maybe at one point, but they seem to have interbred, especially with the European populations. There aren't any in African populations.
That's wrong. I'm certain of that. The humans have never interbred with Neanderthals or other hominids. That's what they're doing.
Genetic studies, but who knows? It's their opinion.
There's another explanation for the common genes. Okay, it's like you go through this Svante Pabo at the Max Planck Institute, who claims that that the common genes indicate that there must have been interbreeding between humans and Neanderthals. I don't buy that. I believe there's a much better explanation for the common genes, right? And so what they're requiring, what Pablo is requiring is that some Neanderthal male is going to rape a woman, and then rather than cooking or eating her afterwards as usual, he's going to keep her alive long enough to bear a cross-species child, and then raise that child to reproductive age and have him or her breed back into human populations without anybody catching on. That's ridiculous. Okay, in real life, it's like Neanderthal females would kill that woman the first time a new owner left her alone for 5 minutes. It's like the woman wouldn't fare any better than the subjects of these Soviet attempts to breed humans and apes together to produce super workers in the 1930s. Right? There's so many problems. The humans would, the other thing is that the humans would just, they wouldn't tolerate that a crossbreed child like that. It's like it'd be very obvious. They wouldn't need like DNA testing to figure out who to kill for that kind of reason. It'd be extremely obvious. It's like, meanwhile they were involved in a planet-wide war of extermination, right? I mean, the first experience humans had with hominids, with the Neanderthal, was watching friends and family members being killed and eaten by Neanderthals, okay? So that, beyond some point, it's like, humans to cook and eat a Neanderthal, which they'd killed in battle, was just sending the Neanderthals a message in their own language, okay? So that, what you're talking about really is what's the word I want? It's shoot, I hate getting old.
Yeah.
But it's like bacterial insertion of genes. Okay, and the easiest way in the world to do that would be just to eat something that contains the bacteria. I mean, in other words, you get some kind of a Cro-Magnon war party, traipsing around the Alps, somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they fight a pitched battle with some Neanderthal family. They're sitting around and licking their wounds, like a campfire. And you got like 6 or 8 Neanderthals lying around dead, in the immediate vicinity. And one of these guys said, "Man, this has been a hell of a day. So I'm so hungry I could eat just about anything. There's no way in the world I'm going off hunting right now." It's like, what could there possibly be to eat around this place? Well, what do you think you're going to eat for dinner that night? It doesn't take that much imagination, right? Unless they were to cook a Neanderthal very thoroughly, which is highly unlikely under those conditions, right? Then you would have this question of bacterial insertion of genes, and the fact that you don't have these common genes amongst human populations from Africa, to me just means that like Neanderthal was never on the menu in Africa, right? I mean, so that's, I cannot believe that somebody like this Svante Pabo would not be able to figure that out. That's so simple, right? But I mean, you see, the problem is that for what Pabo is talking about to create a lasting signature in the genetic makeup of modern humans would have to be, the interbreeding would have to be like all the time, right? It'd have to be completely common. So that you're turning, in other words, a person might get by off on a theory which required one probabilistic miracle, a zero probability event in the history of the planet. And that's something which turns out.
Blue eyes, they reckon it was one individual who started off with the blue eyes. And now I think it's quite an high proportion of the population in this country. People have blue eyes. I don't know what it is, maybe 20%, 30%, something like that. But they reckon that all those people came from one person who were actually Aryans, right across the world. So these effects.
Like you've got to explain. You've got to explain the. So I picture there being at least two human groups on the earth right now. It's like you've got the descendants of Adam and Eve and Noah and the people of Genesis, right? And then you've got the descendants of Cro-Magnon man, the people who came here from Ganymede. The people from Ganymede would have been dark-skinned, okay? I mean, they came from a very bright, very warm environment. The people on Mars that you see in these NASA JPL images are Caucasians, okay? And you can call them Aryans if you wish, right? I mean, but, you may, in other words, if you look at, Adam and Eve appear to me to be real people. I mean, there's too much that's been written about them. But you've got your choice, right? You could either go with Genesis, in which Adam and Eve are created ex nihilo here on Earth, right? Or you could go with the Book of Adam and Eve, which is one of these Israelite books which didn't, for whatever reason, did not get included in the Bible. Okay, and the Book of Adam and Eve reads more like science fiction. It reads more as if Adam and Eve have been brought here from somewhere else. Someone else
interpretation is totally open to interpretation. You've got to remember that it's just like inventing the Big Bang. They've got to have explanations for things, and that was how they explain things.
That's one possibility for blue eyes. I don't know. It's like, or it could just be a mutation.
I would think so. I would think it's a mutation somehow of what is it? Someone with what's that condition? Albino condition. Maybe it were a successful mutation of an albino kid. Just one.
What I believe to be the case. What I believe to be the case is that the information for every kind of human that you would ever see is present in all humans, right? It's like, over a period of a few thousand years, I believe it's easily possible to go from predominantly dark skin to lighter skinned people.
We still actually have racially different physiological systems. There are some kind of differences. They're not massive. We can still interbreed, but nevertheless, there's cystic fibrosis in black populations. We have different blood types, which allow for different sort of different control of diseases. Some people with type O can reject most kind of viruses, where someone with type A, B negative has got a weak kind of they're prone to a lot of problems.
Where did blood come from? What?
Sorry?
What about? Where did blood even?
The blood pipes.
Blood is the material it carries the plasma around your body
Yeah,
for yourself to use.
but it's unique only to living creatures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys,
Yeah.
we're about to wrap it up. We've gone over.
Well, there's only one other thing. Greg, there was one other thing I'd like to remind Nick of, which I don't know whether Teddy's aware of, was remember last year, Nick, when we were looking at the Tychosium system?
What system? Sorry, Grouch.
Remember that? The Tychosium system. Whereby,
Oh, yeah,
and one of the things
yeah.
about it was where the, you remember now, so, like that's interesting too with what Teddy talks about. And if he sort of like was able to have a look at and learn a bit about that, he might find that would help him with his hypothesis.
Yeah.
Because what was it, 48,000 years or something, we actually orbit Mars. Is that right, Nick? That sounds about right, doesn't it, Nick?
I can't remember the figures now, but yeah, hang on, let me know. It's the yes, it's the term of the Yuga. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to save it for another day. 'Cause we're coming up to the
Have you?
end of
Yes,
the show.
no, that's all right.
Yeah. Is there
But have you
anything?
ever heard of that?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Greg is
Have you ever
wanting
heard
to.
of the
I'm sorry.
Say,
We'll go for 10 more minutes.
Okay.
all right. The only thing I was going to say, Ted, have you heard of the Tychosium system?
Could you say that? Could you say that slowly? Andy, could you say that slowly? I'm not getting the word that you're using.
Tychosium, which is
Some kind of a system. Which could you repeat that slowly?
YCHSIUM.
CYCH.
Tell him what it was, basically.
OSIA. It's a system of Tycho Brahe, an astronomer who believed in the geocentric Earth system that we're actually rotate. Well, it's a type of geocentric, but we're actually rotating around Mars in that system. It was only really Kepler.
I don't believe the Earth has ever orbited Mars. I don't believe that. It's like, what I believe is that the Earth and Mars both went very quickly from a Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Earth alignment to the present, not present, right, but to the Jupiter system, the Jovian system, where we had Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Earth, right? And that the iconography that you see with David Talbot and F. Cochran and Dwardu and that whole group, right, is the iconography that you would expect from this Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Earth system, right? That's what you had. That was the system that you read about, like in Greek mythology. Okay.
Yeah. But you see, Ted, I think, like, what I'm trying to say is, and Nick's trying to say is, this orbit of Mars isn't something that happens very quickly. From memory, it was 48,000 years. Right? That connects with different things we have also in some of the mythological histories. There are periods where Earth's warmer and cooler and all that naturally. We don't have to burn fossil fuels to do it. So that was really interesting, wasn't it, Nick, at the time?
Well, I mean, it certainly still
There's
is
a fair
because
bit of that bloke.
there are these astronomical anomalies which our current solar system model doesn't really explain very well. And there's a list of about 20 of them that I could find for next time and go through, but anyway, it does describe this unique relationship that we have with Saturn, as well as the other planets. But it's Saturn is a very mysterious entity in this system, and it's quite interesting that Saturn was quite close. Well, it was behind the Sun at the same point of perihelion as that Titan comet. As the comet Atlas. And an observer from, it was only our observer on Saturn, a little satellite going around, Mars, that captured the actual photos for 4 or 5 days of Comet Atlas at perihelion when it was taking them big shots off the Sun. And they repointed this very small Mars orbital telescope, and got the best photos they could of the comet during that period. It was the only thing that they could use to get photos of it. So yeah, I think there's a lot more interesting information to come out of Comet Atlas yet. But Mars is a very mysterious place, and it's always it's regularly out of view behind the Sun. For long periods, so it's interesting planet.
Ted, you got any final words?
No, I'm going to add this. I'm going to add this material about the Eemian climate optimum and the Neanderthal population collapse to the book. I'm going. That'll only be a couple of pages, but it's like I was hoping I wouldn't have to make any further changes to the book. And it's, again, Nick, if you're not familiar with this book of mine, it's like my website is called bearfabrique.com.
Yeah, I'll put
like a bear in the woods. Right. Like a bear in the woods, BEARFABRIK. Fabrique, bearfabrique.com.
Yeah.
And then you just scroll down, you've got a section on Mars, then a section on Ganymede. You've got like a PDF formatted version of that book, which you can just download. It's free. Okay, you've also got a link to an Amazon, like a good quality color paperback, which is $25 on Amazon. I'd rather read things on a computer screen at this point, but
yeah, me too. Yeah,
it's there. It's there, right?
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.
All right, so.
And there you have it. The conversation we had was quite interesting. I thought Nick brought a lot to the table, so did Andy and Ted. And, it's all a matter of opinion at this point. Not until they get down on the ground at Ganymede to see what they find. Of course, I never expect them to tell the truth, but the latest video that I'm going to put a link to in the description talks about Ganymede having something like more water than Earth, more fresh water than Earth. And underneath miles and miles of ice, there could be a warm water ocean because it would still be warmed by the core. Now, I thought that video that I saw on Ganymede lately, that I will link, was interesting. We're just now starting to find out about it. And, Ted is always fascinating to me, and me and Andy and Nick are always batting things around. You know, my mind is open. I don't have a closed mind on anything. It's God bless Thunderbolts for bringing the electric universe to the foreground and stimulating my interest in Saturn theory to begin with. God bless David Talbot, and I missed Walt Thornhill so much. I had a very warm comment, I can't remember from who, but lately that brought me to tears. And Walt was so rich with information and teaching. It makes me well up now just thinking about it. We lost a giant. And you know, whatever your opinion might be, I don't think that all these actual tilts came from the sun. That's the one thing, the main argument that, to me, says that we have, like Wall would say, a fruit salad of a solar system, unlike any other one observed. There has to be an explanation. And we're going to continue with this, and we're going to, explore as much as we can. The more I heal, the more the creative juices come back. And I got knocked for a loop, but I'm doing my best. And I have 5 Patreons that have no expectation from me. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. You know, it's just beautiful. And I'm going to show a couple more videos and play a couple songs and then say goodnight. I have a home care nurse coming over in the morning, and my vitals are all good. I lost all my hair, but it'll grow back. I got till June to get back in shape if I want to play ball again. And God, there's just so much hate and just terrible shit going on in the world right now. And cosmology is always a great escape, and it's my favorite subject. It always will be. But I'm stimulated by just more than that, which is why I have a new website. It's called News and Politics and History, and probably News, because I don't want to confuse anybody or mix them up or think I'm all over the place. But right now I've just been trying to get through this, and my son and I, Greg, we've been getting into some heavy discussions, and I'm going to start adding his opinions. We're going to start doing shows together because he is so good for, the stuff he comes up with just rocks me sometimes. I can't believe it. And he just doesn't really have that motivation to put it out there. And I always say, come on, son, put that out there, man. That's brilliant. So I got to work on him. But, yeah, that was a good discussion. Everybody did a great job. Thank you so much. I want to have, of course, I'm always interested in what Neil Thompson and Shockwave think, and I missed Pauly Girl. We're going to be getting back into the real stuff of the show. I know that Valerie has been struggling lately, and I wish her nothing but the best. And I really truly love all of you, and God bless you all. We're going to get through this. Like someone said in the comments, I got this. It didn't kill me yet, and it takes a lot to kill a human being. I'm going to be around. I plan on living for another while yet. I just got to get through this bullshit. And things get better a little bit every week. It's been a struggle. ever since I started radiation, that shit is still screwing me up. And it ended in July. So, I'm slowly finding my legs again. I didn't need a walker, but I almost got to that point. So I had to lay in bed for 5 months. And that drains the creative juices like nothing else. There's nothing scarier than not being able to breathe. And I got there, but I got it back. I'm getting stronger. I ate solid food for the first time in 5 months, 2 days ago. It hurts my tongue like hell, but I struggle through it. And I just wanted to thank all of you for staying with me and sending me your warmth and prayers and love. I feel every bit of it. And I truly do love you. God bless you. We're going to show a couple more videos, and then I'm going to say goodnight with a couple songs. So, thank you. This is my homepage, by the way. And, my videos are here. My live streams are here. I know I've been kind of phoning it in lately, but I'm doing my best. I'll always give you my best. And if you check out my homepage, my Patreon, I just uploaded a book called Brothers, the story of Robert and John Kennedy. John Kennedy will never see another president the likes of him again. He was independently rich. He didn't need to take money from APEP or any of these other conglomerates or, to be in their pockets. He thought for himself. And he was one of the first casualties of the Vietnam War because he was not going to allow combat troops in Vietnam. 58,000 Americans left their blood there and died for our freedom. They were ordered to go to fight for their country just like our Iraqi veterans, our Afghan veterans, all of our veterans, our World War II vets. America is free today because a lot of people spilled their blood and died so that we could have opinions. And I appreciate that more than I'll ever be able to convey. And that's why John Kennedy is my favorite president. When we lost him, we lost our way. And I don't think we've gotten back yet in the right direction. I supported Trump. In a lot of ways he's done good, but in a lot of ways he's back to the status quo. I don't know if it's because he's afraid or I find it hard to believe he just turned his back on us. But you gotta give it some more time. He's just been in office less than a year. And I'm rooting for him. I really am. And I hope that we can just stop the war.
Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
No. I don't know how that happened. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. Anyways, I'll play a couple of videos here and say goodnight. Alright. I babbled long enough.
motifs, portrayals of something that happened cosmically. This has now been accepted. Allen and Dallaire, in their book Cataclysm, say that giant electromagnetic storms, lightning, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, stupendous hurricanes, abruptly displaced bodies of water, celestial bombardment, rains of astonishing volume, and a mighty flood are all quick-acting violent events. There's that key term, quick-acting. These are individuals who are now putting aside this idea of slow, gradual, gradations of change over vast areas of time. Now, these two characters who've written this book, Cataclysm, and who wrote the book When the Earth Nearly Died, who are these individuals? Well, D.S. Allen is Cambridge University science historian specializing in paleography. His colleague, J.B. Dallaire, is Oxford University geologist, anthropologist, and museum creator of geology at the University of Southampton. These characters come out with a book, When the Earth Nearly Died, and their other one, Cataclysm, in the 90s. And the science is in to prove that the uniformitarian theories are just not sustainable, and that Darwinian theories are not sustainable. But how come we have not heard universal debate about these works? These are the top specialists in their field. And yet we go to high school, we turn on the television, we read in the journals and the magazines and the newspapers the same old regurgitated Royal Academy, Royal Society information, as if nothing has ever changed. In those days, Noah saw the earth that it had sunk low, and its destruction.
Worlds in Collision is a book of wars in the celestial sphere that took place in historical time. In these wars, the planet Earth participated too. This book describes two acts of a great trauma. One that occurred 34 to 35 centuries ago, in the middle of the second millennium before the present era. The other in the 8th and beginning of the 7th century before the present era. 26 centuries ago, accordingly. This volume consists of two parts, preceded by a prologue. Harmony, or stability, in the celestial and terrestrial spheres is the point of departure of the present-day concept of the world as expressed in the celestial mechanics of Newton and the theory of evolution of Darwin. If these two men of science are sacrosanct, this book is a heresy. However, modern physics of atoms and of the quantum theory describes dramatic changes in the microcosm, the atom, the prototype of the solar system. A theory, then, that envisages not dissimilar events in the macrocosm. The solar system brings the modern concepts of physics to the celestial sphere. This book is written for the instructed and uninstructed alike. No formula, no hieroglyphic will stand in the way of those who set out to read it. If occasionally historical evidence does not square with formulated laws, it should be remembered that a law is but a deduction from experience and experiment, and therefore laws must conform with historical facts, not the facts with laws. The reader is not asked to accept a theory without question. Rather, he is invited to consider for himself whether he is reading a book of fiction or nonfiction, whether he is reading is invention or historical fact. On one point alone, not necessarily decisive for the theory of cosmic catastrophism, I borrow credence. I use a synchronical scale of Egyptian and Hebrew histories, which is not orthodox. It was in the spring of 1940 that I came upon the idea that in the days of the Exodus, as evident from many passages of the scriptures, there occurred a great physical catastrophe, and that such an event could serve in determining the time of the Exodus in Egyptian history, or in establishing a synchronical scale for the histories of the peoples concerned. Thus, I started Ages in Chaos, a reconstruction of the history of the ancient world from the middle of the second millennium, before the present era, to the advent of Alexander the Great. Already, in the fall of that same year, 1940, I felt that I had acquired an understanding of the real nature and extent of the catastrophe. And for 9 years, I worked on both projects, the political and natural histories. Although Ages in Chaos was finished first in the order of publication, it will follow this work. Worlds in Collision comprises only the last 2 acts of the cosmic drama. A few earlier acts, one of them known as the Deluge, will be the subject of another volume of natural history. The historical cosmological story of this book is based on the evidence of historical texts of many peoples around the globe, on classical literature, on epics of northern races, on sacred books of the peoples of the Orient and Occident, on traditions and folklore of primitive peoples, on old astronomical inscriptions and charts, on archaeological finds, and also on geological and paleontological material. If cosmic upheavals occurred in the historical past, why does not the human race remember them? And why was it necessary to carry on research to find out about them? I discuss this problem in the section Collective Amnesia. The task I had to accomplish was not unlike that faced by a psychoanalyst who, out of disassociated memories and dreams, reconstructs a forgotten traumatic experience in the early life of an individual in an analytical experiment on mankind. Historical inscriptions and legendary motifs often play the same role as recollection, infantile memory, and dreams in the analysis of a personality. Can we, out of this polymorphous material, establish actual facts? We shall check one people against another, one inscription against another, epics against charts, geology against legends, until we are able to extract the historical facts. In a few cases, it is impossible to say with certainty whether a record or tradition refers to one or another catastrophe that took place through the ages. It is also probable that in some traditions, various elements from different ages are fused together. In the final analysis, however, it is not so essential to segregate definitively the records of single world catastrophes. More important, it seems, is to establish, 1, that there were physical upheavals of a global character in historical times. 2, that these catastrophes were caused by extraterrestrial agents. And 3, that these agents can be identified. There are many implications that follow from these conclusions. I refer to them in the epilogue so that I can omit reference to them here. A few readers went over this book in manuscript and made valuable suggestions and remarks in chronological order. Of their reading, they are Dr. Horace M. Callan, formerly Dean of Graduate Faculty of the New School for Social Research, New York; John J. O'Neill, Science Editor of the New York Herald Tribune; James Putnam, Associate Editor of the Macmillan Company; Clifton Fademan, Literary Critic and Commenter; Gordon A. Atwater, Chairman and Curator of the Hayden Planetarium and the American Museum of Natural History, New York. The last 2 read the work at their own request after Mr. O'Neill had discussed it in an article in the Herald Tribune of August 11th, 1946. I am indebted to all of them, but I alone am responsible for the content and form. Miss Marion Kuhn cleared the manuscript of grammatical weeds and helped in reading the proofs. Many an author has dedicated his book to his wife, or mentioned her in the preface. I've always felt this was somewhat ostentatious, but now that this work is being published, I feel I shall be most ungrateful if I fail to mention that my wife, Ella Shiva, spent almost as much time on it at our desk as I did. I dedicate this book to her. The years when Ages in Chaos and Worlds in Collision were written were years of a world catastrophe created by man. The years when Ages in Chaos and Worlds in Collision were written were years of a world catastrophe created by man, of war that was fought on land, on sea, and in the air. During the time man learned how to take apart a few of the bricks of which the universe is built, the atoms of uranium. If one day he should solve the problem of fission and fusion of the atoms of which the crust of the earth or the water or air are composed, he may by chance, by initiating a chain reaction, take this planet out of the struggle for survival among the members of the celestial sphere. New York, September 1949. The author, the author, the author, the author, the author, the author.
It's the most famous plane.
Electricity produces all the phenomena of nature. That it is the river active agent in evolving visible forms of substances whose results are known as laws. Man is the most perfect enfoldment of nature's electric laws, and the world and the universe are the universal expression of electric life and energy. Man and all the visible forms of creation
Don Scott. What is wrong with present-day accepted astrophysics? It is not scientific. In today's world, many people characterize themselves as being scientists. Only those who always carefully follow the scientific method are deserving of that title. Modern establishment astrophysics fails the test in several ways. The empirical scientific method. Scientists are distinguishable from artists, poets, musicians, and others in that they use what is known as the scientific method. It is not that inspiration or the muse is not valuable in science. It is, but it is not the starting point of what we call science. In the process, called the scientific method, a true scientist will observe nature carefully, record what is seen. 2. Seek patterns in the observed data, put numbers on the data, fit equations to those numbers. 3. Generalize those equations into a world description of the process. This is a hypothesis. 4. Carry out experiments and or gather independent data to see how well the hypothesis predicts future observations and results. This is called closing the loop on your hypothesis. Reject or modify the hypothesis if the experiment show it falls short of success in these predictions. Only after the results of several experiments have been successfully predicted by the hypothesis can it be called a theory. If two different theories predict a given phenomenon equally well, the simpler theory is probably the best one. This principle is called Occam's razor. Theories can never be proven to be correct. Some other mechanism entirely may be the cause of the observed data. But theories can be disproved if they fail to predict the outcomes of additional experiments. Such theories are termed to be falsified. Sometimes the scientific method, as described above, is called the empirical method, the deductive method, As an alternative to the empirical method, there is a method of deriving theories from assumed generalizations about the universe. This is called the deductive method. In this process, one starts with a law of nature, or obviously correct generalization about the way things work, and deduces, reasons out, derives its consequences in detail. A hypothesis arrived at via this method is promoted to the status of being a theory if a large enough body of experts accept it. Thus, in this method, a vote of experts determines if the theory is correct. Once such a theory has been accepted, it is not easily rejected in the light of conflicting evidence. It is, however, often modified, made more complex, and unfortunately, new data is often selectively chosen to support it. The selection and publication of only the data that support the accepted theory is expedited by the peer review system. If the experts who have accepted a given theory control both the funding of future research and also what gets published, there is little chance for conflicting viewpoints to develop. Pseudoscience. Some hypotheses, when presented by august, well-established scientists, are given credence without anyone questioning whether the hypothesis has been developed using the scientific method. Yet, in most cases, it is not difficult to check whether or not scientific method has been used correctly. For example, consider the hypothesis that there are gnomes in my garden that always make themselves invisible when anyone tries to observe them. Clearly, no conceivable experiment or observation could falsify that statement. This is evidence the hypothesis comes from a pseudoscientific source. Legitimate theories must be falsifiable. The problem forced by modern astronomy is that experiments are not possible because the stars are light years away. We cannot hope to be able to go there and perform experiments on them. Until relatively recent, even the planets were out of reach. Thus, cosmologists never get to complete the scientific method. We cannot close the loop in cosmology, but if we cannot test our hypotheses, how can we reject or modify them? The answer, of course, is that astrophysicists, more than those in any other branch of science, must be exceedingly careful to continually examine their hypotheses in the light of any new data. It is the contention of the author of these pages that they have not been doing this. Einstein was a purely theoretical physicist. He never went near a physics lab. He conducted only Gedankenexperimenten, thought experiments, in order to arrive at his general theory of relativity, GR. This is a perfect example of the deductive method at work. Its use is exceptionally dangerous in an area like cosmology, wherein it is difficult to falsify any theory. Now that GR theory is accepted by the establishment astrophysics, any new data, such as photographs of the astronomical object known as the Einstein cross, are discussed only within the framework of this complicated theory. The images of the four small objects in the Einstein cross, when looked at only from this viewpoint, are considered to be supporting evidence for the GR theory. However, they could just as well be interpreted as being evidence supporting a much simpler cosmological theory. Evidence contradictory to the accepted Big Bang theory, such as images of connections between objects that have widely different redshift values, are dismissed as being mirages. False assumptions in astrophysics. Most of today's accepted astronomy cosmology is a set of deductively arrived at hypotheses precariously based on two false assumptions. 1. Electrical fields, currents, and plasma discharges are not important in space. Only gravitational and magnetic fields are important. 2. If the light from an object exhibits redshift, the object must be speeding away from us, and its distance from us is directly proportional to that speed. Both of these assumptions are demonstrably wrong, and they have been and continue to be contradicted by actual observations of the sky. Those observations tell us that the universe is highly electrical in nature, and 2, redshift is more a measure of an object's youth than its velocity. The continued refusal of astrophysicists to re-examine their hypotheses in light of these new observations is the focus of these pages. And I'll just say this, he says gravitational and magnetic fields are important. I would say magnetic fields are a recent installment, and that's not what Dave Talbot calls taking the back door to the electric universe. The continued refusal of astrophysics to re-examine their hypotheses in light of these new observations is the focus of these pages. Invisible entities invented to patch up failing theories. The theories that have sprung from these faulty, overcomplicated mathematical models, I would say monstrosities, have given birth to such arcane notions as curved space, neutron stars, WIMPs, and now WIMPzillas, machos, several different types of black holes, superluminal jets, dark energy, and magnetic field lines that pile up, merge, and reconnect. All of these inventions are fictions put forth by astrophysics in desperate efforts to defend their theories when faced with contradicting observations. None have ever been observed or photographed. Many of them are demonstrably impossible. But their existence is repeatedly invoked to explain new observations and measurements that contradict the enshrined theories of modern astronomy without resorting to the use of electrical principles. We continually hear statements such as, "There must be a black hole at the center of the galaxy. Otherwise, we cannot explain its level of energy output. There must be invisible dark matter in the galaxy. Otherwise, we cannot explain how it rotates the way it does. 99% of the universe is made up of dark energy. Otherwise, the Big Bang Theory is falsified. Pulsars must be made of strange matter. Otherwise, we might have to look for an electrical explanation." We are also asked to believe that two objects, like galaxy NGC 4319 and its companion Markarian 205, are not connected together, even though we have photographs of the connection. So we are told not to believe in things that we can see, but that we should believe in the existence of the magic entities that their theories require, even though we cannot see or measure them. Astrophysics denigrate outsiders, then quietly adapt their new ideas. There have been several instances in the past when the astronomical mainstream has long rejected the idea that is later accepted. There is usually no public disgrace for the in-group who were on the wrong side of the issue, when, after being viciously denigrated, the validity of a new idea becomes inescapably obvious. A few years go by, and then we quietly hear, well, everyone has known for a long time that the new idea, was always true. Absolutely. An example of this is Hans Alfvén's discovery of plasma waves. This relatively recently discovered property of plasmas is now being wrongly used by astrophysics to explain away all sorts of what is for them enigmatic phenomena, such as the temperature inversion in the sun's lower corona. The future. In a few years, perhaps we will hear, well, everyone has known for a long time that quasars are not extremely distant, and redshift is more a measurement of youth of an object than its recessional velocity and distance. No one said for sure there ever was a Big Bang. It was just another false theory. Everyone has known for a long time that electric currents flowing in plasmas produce many of the mysterious observed solar and cosmic phenomena, and we will not hear of machos, WIMPs, neutronium, dark energy, and broken magnetic field lines from any serious scientist ever again. Time will tell. Will the founders of the electric plasma universe theory be acknowledged as having been the pathfinders they are? Or will lesser men quietly adopt these ideas without giving credit to their originators and then claim them to be well known? This website. The following pages discuss some of the people, observations, and ideas that challenge the false assumptions that mainstream science refuses to re-examine. When you read them, remember that any single unanswered challenge of this sort is enough to bring down the pseudo-scientific magic show that modern astronomy cosmology has become, like a house of cards. Don Scott. Well said, Don. Can you guys out there in the YouTube world hear me? Am I coming through loud and clear? Scientists discover an energetic cosmic serpent in our galaxy. In ancient Egyptian mythology, APEP was the serpent god of darkness, destruction, and chaos. In contemporary astronomy, APEP is the nickname for a massive, just-discovered star system surrounded by serpentine dust swirls and officially known as 2X MMJ160050.7-514245. They just have a way with names. It is believed to be the only such star system of its kind in our galaxy, and it's destined for destruction. We never expected to find such a system in our own backyard. Joseph Kellingham of the Netherlands Institute for Radio Astronomy said in a statement, Kellingham is the author of the study unveiling this discovery published today, November 19th, in Nature Astronomy. Like its namesake, the mythological god of yore, Y-O-R-E, who was blamed for solar eclipses and said to battle the sun god Ra every night. I thought that was Set. The cosmic serpent APEP is a sign of a very powerful force. Scientists believe that the star system is made up of a binary star system and a single star, which are rotating around each other, held together by electricity. The rotating stars in this system are called Wolf-Rayet stars. They are dying very slowly and will likely end their lives with a gamma ray burst, one of the most energetic, explosive forces in the universe. Long-duration gamma ray bursts. Before their end, Wolf-Rayets release powerful stellar winds that hurl out matter at millions of miles per hour. In this system, stellar winds were measured to travel at nearly 7.5 million miles, 12 million kilometers an hour. The dust created by these winds moves much more slowly, swirling like a pinwheel around the connected star systems. The scientists believe one of the stars, about 8,000 light years from Earth, is the first known candidate in the Milky Way to produce a dangerous gamma ray burst, among one of the most energetic events in the universe. When it explodes and dies, The system, comprising a pair of scorchingly luminous stars, one star is on the brink of a massive supernova explosion. Findings published in Nature Astronomy are controversial, as no gamma-ray burst has ever been detected within our galaxy. Yet in the southern constellation of Norma, nestled beneath the Scorpion's tail, astronomers have discovered this unique star system. At its heart, wrapped in an elegantly sculpted dust and gas, lies a powerful binary pair. The two hot, luminous stars known to astronomers as Wolf-Rayets orbit each other every 100 years or so, according to research conducted at Sydney Institute for Astronomy. This orbital dance is embossed on a fast wind streaming off the stars using spectroscopy. Astronomers have measured the velocity of the stellar winds, fast at 12 million kilometers per hour, or 1% the speed of light. The rapid wind and strong magnetic field of the pulsar have generated a wind of energetic matter and antimatter, particles that flow away from the pulsar near the speed of light. This pulsar wind has created a highly magnetized bubble of high-energy particles called a pulsar wind nebula, seen as the blue region surrounding the pulsar. The high speed may be due to the pulsar wind nebula expanding into relatively low-density environments, unlike other supernova remnants from this era. The brightness of this pulsar wind nebula has decreased 10% from 2000, and it poses no threat to Earth. Wind Pulsar Nebula. First I've ever heard of it. And it also says, as well as its unusual structure, the rapid changes observed in KEDS 75 Pulsar Wind Nebula, that's a new one, as well as its unusual structure point to the need for more sophisticated models of the evolution of pulsar wind nebulas. Enigmatic neutron star. More sophisticated models, that means more funding. It's insane. That's the serpentine swirl dubbed APEP. I remember watching a cosmology show a few years ago where they were exploring the hypothesis of a supernova striking the Earth and blowing our atmosphere completely off the planet in one fell swoop. And everyone on Earth would be, everyone would be out of air. That would be it. Get to the chopper! What does the electric universe have to say about Wolf-Rayet stars, or Wolf-Rayet stars? And it is spherical shells around stars are signs of electrical activity. More than 70 years ago, Dr. Charles Bruce noted that planetary nebulae are similar to electric discharges. He reasoned that their shapes were hourglasses, with central stars obscured by dusty toroids. Since nebular shapes are similar to the twisted filaments and spirals of electric discharges, they also appear as near spherical shapes. A recent press release states that a bubble-like structure is wrapped around Wolf-Rayet star SH2-308, or Easy Canis Majoris, in the constellation Canis Major. As the announcement says, ongoing radiation from the star pushes the bubble out further and farther, blowing it bigger and bigger, some 60 light years apart. Electric discharges in plasma form double layers along their current axis. Positive charges build up on one side of the cloud, negative charges on the other. A powerful electric field develops between them, and if enough charge is applied, the double layer glows. Otherwise, it remains in dark mode and is invisible. In plasma, the electric charges spiral into filaments, which attract each other, sometimes pinching into arc mode discharges. As written many times, Double layers can be pumped with energy from galactic Birkeland currents. Increased flux density draws matter from surrounding space into filaments, igniting nebular gases electrically. Could this be what is reported by the European Space Agency? Unfortunately, at this point in time, the only way to detect double layers in space is to send a spacecraft equipped with a Langmuir probe through them. Local experiments within the solar system detect double layers like those created in the laboratory. Such structures are known as magnetospheres, magnetotails, cometary nuclei, and comet tails. In 1981, Nobel laureate Hans L. Fane wrote, "It is unpleasant to base far-fetched conclusions on the existence of a structure which we cannot detect directly, but the alternative is to draw far-reaching conclusions from the assumption that in distant regions the plasmas have properties which are drastically different from what they are in our own neighborhood." This is obviously far more unpleasant. Filaments, braids, overlapping rings, stacked rings around the central star, hourglass shapes and coherent tubes of filaments are visible around SH2 308, and I'd probably say around APEP too. In an electric universe, it is not hot gas that flows through space. It is plasma. The physics of electricity apply, not the physics of wind. Inside the shells of planetary nebulae are more and more plasma sheaths that act like capacitors, alternately storing and releasing electric energy. Electric currents ebbs and flows inside and outside sheaths within the shells. The Hubble Space Telescope's image reveals many of plasma's fundamental glow mode characteristics. Since the central star's axis is a Z-pinch funnel, the cylinder of electric current appears to be a circle or bubble. Nebulae are stellar Z-pinches in a flow of electricity, so there is enough power to supply the radiation load of current of the central star. Stars, as written many times elsewhere, are powered by electricity coupled with nebular discharge currents rather than nuclear fusion. Since nebular currents cannot exist beyond their optical glows, they must be part of completed circuits that wind through the Milky Way. Stephen Smith. Pretty much would say that that's the answer of what they're seeing around APEP, electric current, ionized electric plasma. The important point to take away here is that there is no dust and gas blowing around in space where there's a wind. They don't even support there being a wind, seeing as how they say it's a vacuum, so they contradict themselves. Everything you see in space is electrified plasma. End of story. And they just tap dance around that at all costs. That article leads into another one here: capacitance, resistance, and induction power of the sun. See what it has to say. What are stars? And by extension, what is the sun? Consensus opinions state that the sun is composed of elements formed in the Big Bang. Other elements created in dying stars, and elements formed in supernovae explosions. Primordial hydrogen and helium make up 98% of its overall mass, with a process of continuous creation in its core. Thermonuclear fusion reactions are thought to produce heavier elements there. Heliophysicists think that the sun is a gravity engine, deriving all of its power from mechanical compression. It is called thermonuclear fusions because dust clouds collapse. Energies thought to occur when gas and dust clouds collapse, forcing hydrogen atoms together in a gravitational vice. The result is supposed to be the formation of helium atoms and the release of energetic particles that can take 1,000,000 years to travel outward from the solar core. Acoustical waveguides then carry hot gas from inside the sun on a conveyor system that depends on convection and shock waves. The fact that kinetic energy dominates astronomical theories is illustrated by a recent press release from the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan. The Ganymede spacecraft, in orbit around the sun, observed the strongest magnetic field ever directly measured on the surface of the sun. However, the bias toward mechanical action is obvious when they announce that the field is due to gas outflow from one sunspot pushing against another sunspot. Wait a minute, did it just say the Japanese are in a spacecraft? Oh, they have a probe. What are they doing? Buzzing around the solar system? Big red ball on the side. Yeah, same old. They're not allowed to think. They've got to know better. I mean, a lot of them probably, but they just play the game, but they don't get paid. Consensus schools of thought do not accept electric universe theory, viewing the sun as an anode or positively charged terminal with an electric double layer isolating it from charged particles traveling through the galaxy. Suggests that the sun experiences charge-discharge phenomena inside its heliosphere. Therefore, it is the sun's capacitive, resistive, and inductive aspects that drive its activity. Yes, indeed. Did you know that when you get an X-ray, that inside that X-ray machine is nothing more than an anode and a cathode that's electrically driven, just like nuclear explosions? They short out the electrostatic field of the Earth. An electric sun means that electric discharges penetrate its photosphere, allowing electric charge to flow into its depths. It is electromagnetic flux tubes, rather than acoustical waveguides, that expose the sun's cooler interior. Those flux tubes connect the sun's electromagnetic environment with other nearby charged bodies, planets, moons, comets, etc. Electric fields in space accelerate charged solar particles, creating coherent electric networks that flow through the solar system. In an electric universe, celestial bodies are immersed in plasma and interact along circuits. Since the sun is electrically interconnected with the Milky Way, it should be thought of as a charged object seeking equilibrium with its environment. Since the balance is not stable, electric charge flowing into and out of the sun can sometimes cause tremendous bursts of energy called solar flares. A positive space charge sheath exists with respect to the interstellar medium, ISM, so sunspots and flares result from variations in electrical conditions. The sun appears to experience cyclic influences that point to an association with a fluctuating galactic circuit. The extent of that circuit is unknown, but probably involves thousands of cubic light years. The electricity moving through transmission lines is also not known. But consensus astronomers are constantly amazed by the power output from solar flares. Solar flares are most likely cosmic lightning bursts discharging vast quantities of matter at near relativistic speeds out into space. As mentioned, the circuit connecting the sun with the Milky Way probably extends for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of light years, giving some indication that the electrical energy feeding the solar anode must be substantial. The electric universe advocate Wal Thornhill wrote, "While enormous time and resources have been poured into the effort to understand stars based on a single outdated idea, those familiar with plasma discharge phenomena have been paying close attention to the observed phenomena on the sun and finding simple electrical explanation. After 100 years of neglect, an electrical model of stars is just beginning to emerge." Stephen Smith, with a hat tip to William Thompson.
Okay, so we're going to start off with a quotation by Heaviside here. Heaviside had an interesting way of starting off his chapters in electrical engineering by telling little stories. So here we have a story. The following story is true. There was a little boy and his father said, "Do try to be like other people. Don't frown." And he tried and tried but could not. So his father beat him with a strap and then he was eaten by the lions. Reader, if young, take warning. By his sad life and death, for though it may be an honor to be different from other people, if Carlyle's dictum about the 30 million still be true, yet other people do not like it. So if you are different, you had better hide it and pretend to be solemn and wooden-headed until you make your fortune. For most wood-headed people worship money, and really I do not see what else they can do. If particularly you are going to write a book, remember to be wooden-headed. So be rigorous, that will cover a multitude of sins, and do not frown. There is a time for all things, for shouting, for gentle speaking, for silence, for washing of pots and pans, and the writing of books. Now let the pots and pans go black, and let's set to work. It's hard to make a beginning, but now it must be done. So this is where we begin, with the advice of Hall of Heaviside. So we go right back to the origins of science, which bring us to two people, Plato and Aristotle. But first, let's go back to Steinmetz. This is the guy who basically we're talking about. He invented the mathematics that allowed a picture and engineerability of electricity that was beyond anything that any of the great mathematicians or scientists or anybody from that era could do. This is about 1900. And then in our next shot, this is the other subject of our talk, is electricity in its wild, pure form. You're looking at about 100-foot long, 440,000 volt, 1,000 ampere electrical discharge that just doesn't want to go away but continues to grow. These are the things that the electrical power industry was almost brought to its knees on in trying to tap or prevent these type of situations from happening in the electrical system, and Steinmetz was the one that figured it out. Okay, the next shot. Okay, now Mr. Whittaker wrote a book called Theories of Ether and Electricity, or the historical representation of the theories of ether and electricity, that covers all the scientific work in electricity. It's about a 3-volume set of about 1,500 pages. And if anybody wants to see where all of these ideas came from about the ether and about light and about relativity and quantum, this is the guy that cataloged the whole thing in a way that is just absolutely mind-boggling. Right down to the finest detail. You can go through all of Faraday's experiments and Maxwell's experiments and make your own decision from them, because he doesn't make a decision for you. He just simply outlines the history. So you don't have to redo all the experiments of the past 200 or 300 years. So go to the next shot. Okay, now we have Plato. So our method of thinking comes from two people, Plato, and then we have following him, we have Aristotle. So Plato's thinking was to produce schemes more or less independent of existence on the basis of all being, and they were totalitarian in nature. For Aristotle is the systematic experience of the surrounding universe, truth attained progressively through the work of individual efforts. Now Oliver Heaviside breaks this down a little further in the concept of natural philosophy. All of these people, Heaviside, Maxwell, Thomson, everybody that we're going to be talking about consider themselves a natural philosopher. It's a mode of thinking that doesn't really exist anymore today. Now Heaviside broke the natural philosophy down into two terms, those of the vitalists, which dealt with the living world, and that of the materialists, which dealt with the non-living world, which of course is us as electrical engineers. Now we can find the basic beginnings of science out of Aristotle's thought, but it had to be modified by an English Franciscan friar by the name of Ockham in 1350. He broke tradition with medieval thinking around 1350 and can be called the father of modern science. His line of reasoning led to Copernicus, then Galileo and Kepler. The mode of thinking was now how instead of why. Descartes in the 1600s continued the line of reasoning and developed the first concept of the ether, which is the most important concept in dealing with electricity. Descartes regarded a metaphysics beyond the physical. He called it the last part to be studied, as it is necessary to have previous knowledge of many things. The study of electricity, considering the electric phenomenon as non-physical, is hereby, by Descartes' reasoning, a metaphysical and not a physical study. And this is the center of the whole problem. Electricity is not a place for physicists. Okay, now Erasmus in 1509 gave a basic description of pre-Descartes thinking, which basically is where we are back again today. He said, there are innumerable niceties concerning notions, relations, instants, and formalities, which no one can pry into unless they have eyes that can penetrate the thickest darkness, and there can see things that have no existence whatsoever. The very state that Erasmus complains of in 1509 has been reborn in the concepts of relativity and what I refer to as quantum mysticism. Tesla states, the scientists from Franklin to Morse were clear thinkers and did not produce erroneous theories. Scientists today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. That's a pretty heavy statement for Tesla to make. Now, Edwin Armstrong, after being ripped off by RCA for his FM invention, really summed up the concept the best with the phrase, they substitute words for reality and then talk about the words. Heaviside gives his idea on what science is really about in his era, and very complicated statements. There is no self-contained theory possible apart from practical meaning. For a language is used in its enunciation, which implies that developed ideas and complicated processes of thought are already in existence besides the general experience associated therewith. We define things in a phrase using words. These words hail to be explained by other words, and so on forever in a complicated maze. There is no bottom to anything. We're all antipodians and upside down. The misinterpretation of J.J. Thomson's discovery of the electron greatly hampered the understanding of electricity. And in 1900, Steinmetz summarizes the situation in one of his books. He says, unfortunately, to a large extent in dealing with the dielectric field, the prehistoric conception of the electrostatic charge on the conductor still exists. This destroys the analogy between the two components of the electric field, the magnetic and the dielectric, and make the consideration of the dielectric field unnecessary complicated. In actuality, it eliminates the dielectric field and makes it so that you can't calculate it and substitutes electron flow in its place. Wires are not conductors of electricity. This misconception of so-called conductors or wires carrying electricity like water in a pipe was continuously attacked by Heaviside in his writings. The entire article is written on the matter titled, A Perfect Conductor is a Perfect Obstructor, but does not absorb the electromagnetic energy of the waves. Heaviside states, it was discovered by mathematical reasoning that when an electric current is started in a wire, it begins entirely at its skin, in fact upon the outside of the skin, and that, in consequence, sufficiently rapidly impressed fluctuations of the current keep to the skin of the wire and do not sensibly penetrate its interior. The concept of electron flow in wires rather than electrical field flow around the wires can be related to seeing the footprints of the invisible man in the snow. Heaviside says now, very few, if any, mathematical electricians, he's writing this in about 1890, very few, if any, mathematical electricians could understand this fact. Many of them neither understand it or believe it. Even many who do believe it so do not because they are told so, I believe, simply because they can in the least feel positive about the truth of their own knowledge. An eminent practitioner remarked after prolonged skepticism, if Sir Thomson says so, who can doubt it? What a world of worldly wisdom lies in that remark. That's Heaviside's quote. The relativists, with their concept of distorted measurement, or curved space, replacing an ether, and their concept of the equivalency of matter and energy worked great harm into electrical sciences. A post-Maxwellian theory of electromagnetism was to prevail, ignoring the works of Tesla and J.J. Thomson. Tesla states, "For more than 18 years I have been reading treatises, reports of scientific transactions, and articles on Hertz wave theory to keep myself informed, but they've always impressed me of works of fiction. Energy-matter equivalency, as propounded by the relativists, serves to distort the proper understanding of the continuity of energy as represented by Heaviside. The false doctrines of the law of conservation of energy has a deleterious impact on the findings of Steinmetz and others that electrical energy can be synthesized. Relativism sought to eliminate the concept of electricity in its entirety through the denial of the concept of the ether and plunged science into a giant glut of Platonic thinking and thereby established a type of religion called quantum mysticism. It seeks the creation of a spiritual entity, such as a goddess, in which to engender its framework of thinking. The influence, somewhat forceful, of the British thinking on science has been also a serious impediment upon the growth of electrical science. Foremost was the British Association, establishing a distorted system of units, ohms, farads, and what have you, representing electrical quantities. The effects were disastrous. Arbitrary factors such as 4 pi or the speed of light squared stuck to the electrical units like crap on shoes. The relativists took these parasitic factors, which have no meaning in real terms, and fabricated an entire way of thinking out of them. Heaviside used the phrase, the brain-wasting perversity of the British. Euler describes British thinking on gravity as, the English maintain that attraction is a property essential to all bodies, mutually to approach as if they were impelled by feeling. Other philosophers consider this opinion as absurd and contrary to the principles of rational philosophy. What was happening is the British were trying to say there was nothing in between the objects that attract, such as magnets, that it was purely the bodies themselves and space in between was void of any acting material, which has to be complete nonsense if you're going to deal with electricity. That's where the ether comes in. English natural philosophers such as J.J. Thomson totally ignored the work of Americans such as Tesla. In fact, racial and national conflict played a major role in what would be established as scientific thinking. The Lay of France would rail upon the works of American Ben Franklin, the grandfather of modern electrical science. The French would enrage the English with their ideas on Newton, and hereby the English abandoned the ether concept for action at a distance in reprisal. Maxwell was to predominate over Helmholtz. The important works of Goethe and Steiner, who came up with a completely complementary concept of electricity and matter and these things that the British, through Newton, were working on, were completely ignored by the British and Newtonian thinking, even though the works of Steiner are extremely important in understanding certain electrical relationships. Racial mysticism such as Nazism or Zionism has given the world today a twisted nuclear thermodynamic science, producing a divergent culture racing towards destruction. Steinmetz regarded the Maxwellian concept of the transformer a fantasy. In fact, modern physics' representation of transformer action is the diametric opposite of that of reality. In the manner of Heaviside, let us tell a story. The story is entitled An Explosion at the Shipyard. Enough. Heaviside laments. The question is what now is to be done? Are we modern pygmies who, by looking over the shoulders of the giants, can see somewhat further than they did, to go on perpetuating their errors forever and ever, and even legalizing them? Upon the general acceptance of Einstein's relativity, Oliver Heaviside painted his fingernails pink, removed all the furniture from his house, and slept on a block of stone, and wrote no more. Okay, that's the completion of the first part. Are there any questions? Okay. So now we're going to get into basically what Steinmetz is about. And this towards a correction of this type of problem, stepping on toes as one goes on, which is basically the air of this particular talk I'm giving. This might be the conversion from Heaviside to Michael Savage. To quote Heaviside, this seems strong language, but as Professor Tate tells us, that it is almost criminal not to know several foreign languages, which is a venial offense in the opinions of others. It seems necessary to employ strong language when the criminality is more evident. It must be severe and logical. This is why Heaviside was eventually banned from writing, at least for a while. Upon giving up, Tesla states, I am unwilling to afford to some small-minded and jealous individuals the satisfaction of having thwarted my efforts. These men are to me no more than microbes of a nasty disease. My project was retarded by nature and the world was not prepared for it. But the same laws will prevail in the end and make a triumphal success. So I think you can see from the beginning of my talk that none of these people are very happy. Has anybody got that idea?
If you mix Mike Savage and physics, that kind of get the idea.
What's that?
If you mix Mike Savage and physics, that does get the idea.
Okay, so now we're going to get into Maxwell, Heaviside, and Steinmetz and how the electrical process was picked up by them. For 2,000 years, as Mr. Whitaker tells us in his book, the attractive power of amber had been regarded as a virtue peculiar to that particular substance, or possessed by at most one or two more or two others. Amber being where you rub the material and it picks up the little pieces of paper, the original electrical experiences of the Greeks. Gilbert proved this view to be mistaken, showing that the same effects are induced by friction in a quite large class of bodies. A force which manifests in so many different kinds of matter seemed to need a name of its own, and accordingly, Gilbert gave to it the name electric, which it has ever retained. So the birth of the word electric then became established in 1646 AD. Michael Faraday, in 1831, makes public his theory of an electrified ether consisting of polarized corpuscles forming tubules of electric induction. He begins his study of the analogies between motional and statical electrical currents. Here begins the science of electricity. James Maxwell, in 1855, at the conclusion of Faraday's research and development of the contiguous ether concept, sets out to construct a mechanical model of electrodynamic actions. He wrote, by careful study of the laws of elastic solids, the motions of viscous fluids, I hope to discover a method of forming a mechanical conception of this electronic state adapted to general reasoning. It has been said that Maxwell put the math to Faraday. The impact that Maxwell's ideas had on the emerging electric science was truly profound. Utilizing the recently developed ideas of Newton, Leibniz, and Hamilton, Maxwell produced a mathematical concept of electricity, one that stands to this day.
bizarre structure has been detected towering high above Saturn's hexagon. There is something strange over Saturn's north pole. A tremendous structure towering high above the clouds indicates that the planet's peculiar hexagonal formation is much, much bigger than was initially apparent. The data comes from Cassini. which a year after its demise, plunging into Saturn's opaque atmosphere, contaminated with nuclear waste, is still leading us to new discoveries. When the probe commenced its observations in 2004, during the southern summer, it clocked a warm high-altitude vortex over the planet's south pole. Meanwhile, Saturn's north pole contains the famous hexagonal cloud pattern, but we didn't think it had a vortex until now. Would that be a Birkeland current? The long-term study has found a similar vortex forming over the North Pole as the North approaches summer. High up in the stratosphere, and just like the jet stream below it, the vortex is hexagonal. The edges of this newly found vortex appear to be hexagonal, precisely matching a famous and bizarre hexagonal cloud pattern we see deeper down in Saturn's atmosphere, said planetary scientist Lee Fletcher of the University of Leicester in the UK. The University of Leicester. Crazy.
Leicester.
Leicester? Leicester? Okay. I guess that would be better than Leicester. While we did expect to see a vortex of some kind at Saturn's North Pole as it grew warmer, its shape is really surprising. Either a hexagon has spawned spontaneously and identically in two different altitudes, one lower in the clouds and one high in the stratosphere, or the hexagon is in fact a towering structure spanning a vertical range of several hundred kilometers. Ever since its discovery in the early 1980s by the Voyager spacecraft, the hexagon has been a puzzle for planetary scientists. It wasn't until 2006 that Cassini got a good photo of it, and scientists have been trying to figure out more about it ever since. The structure is strangely symmetrical and is made by an atmospheric jet stream, with winds blowing up to 500 kilometers per hour, 300 miles per hour, and it's huge, measuring a massive 30,000 kilometers, 20,000 miles, across. Earth has a diameter of 12,742 kilometers, 7,917.5 miles. 2 Earths could fit inside the hexagon, with room to spare. It's pretty cool. It also rotates at roughly the same rate as the planet itself, indicating that the structure is tied to the planet's rotation, much like the polar front jet stream here on Earth. And a previous investigation found that using rotation, the hexagon shape could be replicated in fluid in a lab. Cassini studied the hexagon in detail using its composite infrared spectrometer, CIRS, in 2006. At this point, it was still northern winter on Saturn. Its year is around 30 Earth years. Now that's more like it. So its summers and winters are long, which meant the North Pole was in shadow, but CIRS could circumvent this hurdle since it can observe thermal radiation. However, the upper atmosphere was still too cold for reliable infrared observations, so Cassini confined itself to studying the cloud layer. But in 2009, Saturn's North Pole started to emerge from winter. The atmosphere warmed and things turned around. We were able to use the CIRS instrument to explore the northern stratosphere for the first time, from 2014 onwards, said planetary scientist Sandrine Gerlet of the Laboratoire de Météorologie Dynamique in France.
Laboratoire de Météorologie Dynamique.
Laboratoire de Météorologie Dynamique in France. As the polar vortex became more and more visible, we noticed it had hexagonal edges and realized that we were seeing the pre-existing hexagon at much higher altitudes than previously thought. It towered hundreds of kilometers over the clouds and showed quite different behavior from the southern vortex. It's cooler, not as mature And, of course, the South Pole has no hexagon. But since wind conditions change dramatically with altitude, the fact that the hexagon shape persists so much higher than the cloud tops is a baffling conundrum. One way that wave information can leak upwards is via a process called evanescence, where the strength of a wave decays with height, but is just about strong enough to still persist up into the stratosphere, said Fletcher. Well, of course, we know it has to be an electric event. We simply need to know more, because we refuse to see the electricity. It's quite frustrating, anyhow, that we only discovered this stratospheric hexagon right at the end of Cassini's lifespan. And why did you kill it? Afraid what you might find? Saturn's northern summer has already peaked, with the solstice occurring May 2017. Of course, time flies. There are still several years left of summer, and it's expected that the North Pole vortex will continue to develop. However, with Cassini's mission ended, it's uncertain whether scientists will be able to observe these changes. The Cassini spacecraft continued to provide new insights and discoveries right up to the very end. Without a capable spacecraft like Cassini, these mysteries would have remained unexplored by an international team sending a sophisticated robotic explorer to a previously unexplored destination, with results that keep flowing even when the mission itself has ended. The team's research has been published in the journal Nature Communications. The end. Saturn's Polar Vortex by Stephen Smith. May 30th, 2018. Electricity influences Saturn's environment. The picture at the top of the page could be mistaken for recent images of Jupiter's gray-red spot. However, the swirling vortex is actually located in the center of Saturn's vast hexagonal north polar formation. Hexagons and other polygons can sometimes occur in hurricanes, so astrophysicists believe that fluid dynamics can explain what they call a mysterious phenomenon. In 2010, physicists from Oxford University spun a 30-liter cylinder of water with a ring of viscous green dye inside, spinning faster than the cylinder. Their thinking was that a jet stream analog could provide a plausible description of what is happening on Saturn if several factors are ignored. First, they did not produce concentric rings around the hexagon, each with different temperatures. Second, Saturn's poles are hotter than theories predict. Third, there are aurorae at the poles. Fourth, there is electric charge flow connecting Saturn's poles to its family of moons. Additionally, the winds in the polar vortex are 4 times faster than any hurricane, nor does it move around. Such kinetic experiments are insufficient in scope. Since electrical effects are not considered, perhaps the kinetic model should be stood on its head. The polygons in hurricanes should be reevaluated in the light of electrical theories. Electricity flowing through plasmas can create a central column surrounded by concentric cylinders. As retired professor of electrical engineering, Dr. Donald Scott proved, filamentary structures form evenly spaced vortices surrounding the column. As the filaments rotate around one another, a hexagonal cross-section forms inside. In an electric universe, electricity moves along charged Brooklyn currents connecting the sun. Energy flows most strongly into the giant gas planets because their charge differential with the sun is greater
than that of their smaller rocky cousins. The electric sun is what drives so-called meteorological activity on Saturn. Many years ago, planetary scientists admitted that Saturn's polar hurricane cannot be explained. The driving forces behind the motion, and indeed the global motion of Saturn's atmosphere, still need to be understood. Their lack understanding is because electrodynamic circuits initiate anomalous heating on Saturn. Not only Saturn, but the other gas planets as well. Jupiter and Neptune display hot poles. The double eye vortex on Venus, along with the hot poles on Enceladus, Titan, and Io, will also benefit from acknowledging the principal tenets of an electric universe. Stephen Smith.
I had a great time. Good night, folks. I'll see you next week. I promise.